Hey guys, Zen here, and this video is the big one. Two operators are facing updates that will change them each and every round, and every single operator in the game will be affected by this next update that has divided this community and started a war for those who are for it and against it. And yes, we're already speaking on Year 7 Season 3 before Season 2 has left Ubisoft's ice-cold grasp. But before we get underway, there's this buff that grants you rewards for playing the games you enjoy. Guys, Buff is an authorized app in partnership with Overwolf, with over 5 million users, and it's incredibly easy to earn buff points every single day. Play all of your favorite games like Valorant, Fortnite, Rainbow Six Siege, Halo Infinite, and even Minecraft, and earn buff points across all of these titles. You don't have to pay for points. And personally, I love the challenges, and as you complete them, you earn even more points. Then, once you've racked up your buff points, you can redeem them for Steam credit, game keys, and Nintendo, Xbox, and PlayStation gift cards, and unlock sick new skins in-game. And the best part is all you have to do is let Buff run in the background while you play. And of course, they love performance just as much as we do. And so it's safe to use, doesn't hog up resources, and is completely mining free. For this month, there's also a 500 buff point giveaway for you guys. Just download the app and leave a comment with hashtag downloaded buff with your username and enter into a raffle for 500 buff points. And so guys, click the link at the top of the description and download Buff entirely for free today. Thanks to Buff for sponsoring this video, and now let's discuss. First up, there are 4 different ways you typically move around in Rainbow Six Siege. 1, your standard walk, the default for your operator. 2nd, sprinting, usually the loudest and fastest way to get around the map. The 3rd way is the alt walk, where you slow down to an almost inaudible speed and slowly move around the map or push with your sights up. And then lastly, there's the crouch walk. It's faster than the alt walk and slightly slower than default, but when you're crouched, it's always been a quieter option to getting around. Now, of course, there's prone and rappelling to add to that list, but your standard movements can be summed up with these options, and it's the crouch walk that's getting an overhaul in Siege. Rainbow supplied a video that's gone viral in the community, and there are lots of different opinions on what it means. Just watch this. Now, there is a dramatic difference in the sounds between the two examples here, and there are some that are totally for the change, and naturally, plenty of others who do not want to see this become a reality. It just totally reworks what it means to crouch walk around in Siege, and the explanation they give sheds a little more light on why they've decided to do this. We know those early round frags, where an operator manages to sneak behind your squad's lines while crouch walking, can be frustrating. Over the last couple months, we actively investigated the sound mix of crouch walking and found that the balance of sound to movement speed needed some tuning. Compared to alt walking, crouch walking offered an alternative that was both quiet and quick. So with Year 7 Season 2, we've tweaked the audio mix to increase the volume of these footsteps slightly. So for me, I've got to be totally honest. I see the benefits here. If crouch walking was the slowest and, more importantly, quietest way to move around the map, then no, I would be wholeheartedly against this, and I'd want them to reconsider. But because we have those 3 different stages of walking, if you want to be nearly silent, I think looking for more players to alt walk is a positive balance. Crouch walking in its current state has a lot of advantages. For one, you're crouched, and your opponent has to compensate for a different level of aiming. On top of that, you move pretty quickly while crouched, and in a lot of ways, you're silent. And I think the clips actually did a good job at showing how close you can get to someone before they can really pick up on your audio. Now, the big problem has been mostly about the flank. It's a critical tactic in Siege to wait for that perfect timing and make that flank to shift around and to keep the enemies on their toes. Crouch walking is an essential aspect of it because you can be quieter and get closer without being detected. Now, of course, it is still possible to flank or to be flanked, but you'll have to rely more on alt walking or alt crouch walking to improve your survivability. It's a big change, and I do see both sides, but because the option to alt walk exists, I don't think crouch walking should be nearly as effective as that, and so the change should help balance the two. Next up is the biggest and most game-changing update to Rook he has ever had. It's crazy, but in the test server, they released an update early that gives Rook and every single person on defense with one of his armor plates on the ability to self-revive. Basically, Rook's gadget now gives him and his teammates a second chance at life if they've been downed. Now, Rook has always allowed for what would be lethal damage to just down an operator and give them a chance to be picked up by a teammate. Recently, they've given you a health boost with the new health system, but this update would be the absolute pinnacle of Rook's utility. I cannot see how any round would go by without picking a Rook if he could do this. And for the people that saw this early, it was confusing because Sophia once had this ability and it was removed because of how powerful it can be. Early on, even with Tachanka, it was tested out with his rework, and they decided to backtrack on it. And so self-revive is a very sensitive ability in Siege, with operators who have it and others who have lost it. But this would be the first time that an entire team could do it for themselves, and that, I think, is where the biggest problem lies. Now, could Rook use a buff? Yeah, I think ultimately Rook could benefit from a buff like this. But because Rook applies to an entire team, it's tough to say that everyone needs this kind of utility. I actually really like the change, and they're taking it serious because there's a new animation and everything. And so this is definitely being considered. The downside is that I think it takes longer to get back up with this version of self-revive than any other that's been in the game. You've got to pull the bullets out of the vest and slowly make your way back up. And so it could be hard to successfully get up and get back into the fight. But at least with this version of it, you get up with 20 health, which isn't bad. Finka is the latest operator to get self-revive, but again, it only applies to her. Yes, she can get the other attackers up with her gadget, but they can't activate their own adrenal surge and get themselves up without Finka's help. And that's exactly what you'd be able to do with Rook. Look, my question to you is pretty simple. If you have a Rook armor vest on, should you be able to self-revive if you've been downed? That's the buff that's up for grabs for him, and it'll be legendary if it actually goes through. But next up is Year 7 Season 3. Season 2 with Operation Vector Glare is the latest content release, but we're already knowing some specific updates for Season 3. Now, the most dominant attacker has been Finka for a while now. She's topping the charts, and she's become the most picked attacker with a few of her most recent buffs. But in Year 7 Season 3, her reign could be coming to an end because they'll specifically be targeting Finka and her LMG next season. So unless you've been living under a rock, you know that the 6P41 LMG is probably the best LMG in the game, and some might even consider it the best weapon on attack. It just goes to work and has a massive magazine, pretty high damage, and laser-like accuracy. It's just an oppressive weapon all the way around, and when you pair that with an operator who has a global ability and self-revive, you get the top-ranked attacker in Rainbow Six Siege. In Season 3, she's getting an update, and they even admit that they knew we've been looking for one. We can comfortably announce that adjustments will be coming to both LMGs and Finka in Year 7 Season 3. We know you were likely hoping for adjustments this season, so we ask for a little more patience as we work to do this right by you. We appreciate your passion for these changes and look forward to getting them in front of you next season. So just like Ashe for the first 5 years of Rainbow Six Siege and Twitch to follow shortly after, once an operator gets to that top spot, it's only a matter of time before they get toned down, and there's almost no limits to what they'll do. Jaeger, for instance, lost the ACOG, got his gadget reworked, and lost his 3-speed status, all in the name of lowering his presence each and every round, and still for him, that hasn't changed too much. But Jaeger has essential utility that's a challenge to rework into the meta, and Finka doesn't really have that problem. As for the change, I'd assume they'd reduce how much health she gives and maybe bring her down to just 1 boost instead of what she currently has. Finka gives permanent health now and serves as the attacking healer, and that is incredibly valuable right now, and this is added to the fact that even this strong, she still has frag grenades. If anything, those will be the first thing to go, and usually that does the trick, but they did also mention that LMGs as a category would be changed. I think the most obvious thing to do to LMGs is to make you slower when you have them equipped. They do feel a little heavier as you move with them, but it's not enough of a difference from an AR to really outweigh the benefits. And so for Year 7 Season 3, I think LMGs will feel more like, well, heavier LMGs. And lastly here, guys, is a new feature that's flown under the radar for a lot of people, but I think will be used tactically in the future. There's a new accessibility option that allows you to completely remove screen shake from the experience. Screen shake is so deeply embedded in Siege because all throughout the round, there's things in the game that trigger it. If Ashe blows open a soft wall, your screen will shake if you're anywhere near it. If Thermite detonates his exothermic charge from most parts of the map, you'll feel it, and that's really what it is. Yes, it throws you off, but it's because you feel the effects. But ultimately, you can turn this all the way off and have screen shake not be a part of the game. And even though this is an accessibility feature, I can't imagine why you wouldn't turn it off. When these kinds of things happen in the game, they directly affect your gameplay. They make it more difficult to aim, they can shake up your shot and disorient you, and so with it off, that pretty much all goes away. Now, it is far more realistic to keep it on, but tactically and even competitively, I think it makes more sense to turn it off. There are a bunch of graphic settings that you can turn on to make Rainbow Six Siege look much more realistic. And if you crank the graphics up to Ultra, this game looks incredible for a title that launched in 2015. But most pros and high up ranks run low settings with every pretty thing off, and I think you'll start to see more and more of them turn off screen shake as well. It's not a small feature. They said it's for people to play more comfortably, but I think there's a little more to it. And people might end up getting used to a more consistent experience in Rainbow Six Siege. And now, guys, if you want to know about every single change in Operation Vector Glare, click on this video in the middle of your screen screen. Warden is scary good. Glass gets a rework, and we see the only map located in Greece. I'll see you there. Hey, I'm out.